Hello everyone, my name is Shahan Ali Memon and today I'll be presenting my work on characterizing misinformed online health communities. This was in collaboration with Kathleen Carley from ISR and was part of my master's thesis at LTI. It was funded by Center for Machine Learning and Health. So let's begin. Public health misinformation is any health-related claim that is currently false due to scientific evidence. Vaccination-related misinformation is arguably the most prevalent form of misinformation and is amongst the top 10 threats to global health by the World Health Organization. And so in the first part of my thesis, I focus on vaccination-related discourse on Twitter. More recently, COVID-19 has sort of become a hotbed for the spread of misinformation online. And so in the second part of my thesis, I focus on COVID-19 discourse. More concretely, the goals of the study were to characterize misinformed online health communities. We wanted to understand the behavior of misinformed communities, their network structure, the linguistic choices and communication patterns, and how those choices inform us about their values and social identities. And the way we do it is, again, as I already mentioned, this work is in two parts. In the first part, we look at the vaccination discourse. And the second part, we look at COVID-19 discourse. While we're looking at the discourse, we want to understand the communities using that discourse. And the way we do it is by juxtaposing the competing groups within each discourse. In the vaccination discourse, these competing groups would be pro-vaxxers and anti-vaxxers. In COVID-19 discourse, these would be informed versus misinformed group. And so in terms of the findings and contributions, in the first part, we characterize the social linguistic variation in the competing vaccination communities. We look at the network density, the EI index, and echo chamberness. And in terms of linguistic analysis, we look at the linguistic uncertainty, the usage of pronouns, and the usage of linguistic intensification. What we find is that both informed and misinformed groups tend to show highly echo chambery behavior with little to no two-way communication. Anti-vaxxers seem to be much more denser in terms of their community and show high echo chamberness. They use many more intensifiers, many more uncertainty terms, as well as pronouns. In the social linguistic literature, high usage of pronouns and intensification suggests low social power within minority groups, and in this case, anti-vaxxers. And so this sort of makes sense because if you are from minority groups, in this case, anti-vaxxers, you would want to strengthen your argument and so would use many more intensifiers. And then anti-vaxxers may be prone to presentations of anecdotes and resistant to factual knowledge. Because they use many more pronouns, pronouns are sort of known to be proxies for anecdotes and narratives. And so this sort of shows that anti-vaxxers may be prone to presentation of anecdotes if you want to conduct any sort of message intervention. This also makes sense because most of the background literature has also found that misinformation sort of lives and grows on false narratives. Finally, high usage of hedging and epistemic modality markers such as uncertainty words show that anti-vaxxers may be less confident of their beliefs than pro-vaxxers. This is an interesting finding because you would expect a group that is this dense to be much more certain of its behavior. What we find though is something opposite, which could mean that there may be many sub-communities within the anti-vaccination discourse, and that this information can be leveraged to figure out ideal messengers. So people who are low skeptic about vaccines could be used as messengers in message interventions. In the second part, we look at COVID-19 discourse. We measure the network density, the narrative discourse structure, we compare the tone. We also look at the proportion of bots within the discourse. And we were also interested in finding out the proportion of misinformed users within the COVID-19 discourse that were also anti-vaxxers. What we found was, in terms of the network analysis, we found the very similar thing as before, which is that misinformed users are much more organized and have higher network density than the informed group. Both informed and misinformed users have a highly negative tone within their tweets. Surprisingly, informed users use significantly more pronouns, family words, and function words, which suggests that they use many more narratives in their communication. This sort of also made sense in the hindsight when we actually looked at the tweets, because most of our informed users were came from corrective discourse. So these were people who were trying to correct misinformation online by presenting anecdotes and narratives based on their family and relatives who have gotten COVID-19. And so this sort of makes sense in the hindsight. Informed users within the COVID-19 discourse may be less analytical and maybe more authentic, honest, and humble. In terms of bots, what we find is that 14% of the COVID-19 discourse was what tweets was based on tweets of bots, uh, and the bots were present in both informed and misinformed discourse. However, the proportion of bots within the misinformed users was much higher than the informed users. In terms of the vaccination stance, we found that 41% of the misinformed users within the COVID-19 discourse were also anti-vaxxers. The takeaways and opportunities for this, despite the two health-based communities being different, they have similar network and communication patterns. The narrative discourse structure and its prevalence varies across different communities, and the linguistic markers can be used to study the social identities of users. Of course, because there are bots within the discourse, it may be important to look at bots and identify them and identify disinformation campaigns. Finding the right medium and messenger may be an important step for message-based intervention. And finally, because we have already collected and annotated data related to COVID-19 misinformation, that can be used to detect misinformation. And we also have made our code book public for the researchers to collect more annotations. In terms of the achievements, I've already successfully defended my thesis. We have already submitted, published, and presented two papers related to part one and part two in top international conferences. Um, we've also made our data as well as the codebook public for the researchers to use, and we already have around 200 downloads for our data, which is available on Zenodo. And that is all. Thank you, everyone. I'm open to any questions now.